Christa Burgh is in the spotlight today. In 1948, Christa Burgh was born in Argentina to British parents. Because of the family's business, they ended up traveling around the world a lot, and they settled in Ireland, where Christa Burgh still lives today with his wife, Diane, and 2 children. Christa Burgh didn't originally intend to be a guitar singer-songwriter. He didn't know what he wanted to do, though he always had performed for family and friends at the family's castle, if you don't mind. So he's playing around, and then he figures it's time to go off to school, so he goes to Trinity College, gets his degree in French and English, and then he figures it's time to go off to London and look for the big time. So he went to London, took him 2 years, got a publishing deal and a record deal with A&M Records. That was back in 1974. 1975, Christa Burgh releases his first album, which is called Far Beyond These Castle Walls. It went to #1 in Brazil for 30 weeks. A little bit here and there around the world, but Brazil was a big one. The next year he released Spanish Trains and Other Stories. I don't know about you, but that album brings back such memories. It was a big hit in Canada, and that album began the love affair that Christa Burgh seems to have with Canada. Records breaking first here, working. As a matter of fact, in 1980 he released an album called Eastern Wind, which was recorded in Toronto at Mantis Sound. Since then, Christa Burgh has released 12 albums altogether. When he recorded The Lady in Red, which was for the soundtrack, he couldn't do anything in the States. They wouldn't listen to him. Canadians bought the record, they loved it, and because it became such a big hit in Canada, Americans listened to it and became a hit. So there again, furthering the strength between Christa Burgh and Canadians. Since then, Christa Burgh has decided to tour, and on his latest album, he is again touring with all Canadian musicians. He's known as a wonderful songwriter, a wonderful singer with poetic insight. Christa Burgh in the spotlight.
Do you see yourself as much as a storyteller these days as you did in the old days?
Yes, I think I do. With songs like Spanish Train, that was a particular drama in the mind. And I have never been able to write more loose stories. I have to concentrate on a physical object. Like, for example, if I was writing a song about this restaurant, I would have to describe the table rather than the emotions of the people sitting here. I would have to describe the colors and stuff and then get into the story itself. I think it's just the way I've developed.
More Christa Burgh.
So many of your songs are rooted in mystery and romance, and a lot of it seems to deal with perhaps another time. Do you ever fantasize living in a different age? Perhaps just you take a little trip in your head and think of yourself maybe being around in the 18th century? Because I know that you spent a lot of your youth in a castle that your parents owned in the south of Ireland.
Well, I think that's part of it. I also spent a lot of my early youth traveling the world, and living in a castle obviously takes you back into the fantastic era where you're living in a place which was built 800 years before. It gives you an immense feeling of respect, I suppose. That's tonight's word, folks. And just a feeling of empathy towards the people yourself. It leaves you wide open to cynics and people who think that what you're doing is a bunch of crap. As far as I'm concerned, I never listen to the critics. I think I've never met a critic yet who's actually bought a ticket to a show or bought an album that he's just critiqued. I respect the fact that they're professional, but the fact is the people who really matter are the general public, the people who come to the concerts, you know, in the hundreds of thousands and millions of album buyers. And I know when I had not a lot of cash, to actually go out and buy somebody's record was a significant thing for me to do, and I haven't forgotten that. It's a sense of street level feeling that I think it's absolutely vital to, certainly to my continued success, continued life in the music industry, because I have seen colleagues of mine who have become stars, and they really go up there and into the constellations, they never touch the ground, and they get amazed when nobody likes them anymore. It's because you have to keep your ear close to the street.
Tomorrow on the Blues Spotlight, Bryan Adams.
Good evening, I'm Kim Clark Champness. The biggest musical story of the week was, of course, the Grammys, which took place Wednesday night in Los Angeles. Many of you most probably saw it on television. However, to get a real understanding of what goes down at any award show or a convention or a seminar, you really need to be backstage. That's where all the business is done, all the glad-handing, when everyone's relaxed, letting spill what's on their mind. Well, the man that had the backstage pass at this year's Grammy Awards show was our very own Terry David Mulligan and cameraman Tony Wanamaker. Here the team fills this report on the behind-the-scenes view of the Grammys.
It is the 31st annual Grammys, live from the Shrine Auditorium here in Los Angeles, and Much Music is here. This is going to be a wild time. We have Tony the Weasel Wanamaker right here and behind the camera, and me, and we're going to take you for a trip on this one. Check this out.
Hey, Dwight.
Hi, so nice to see you. Excuse me.
Much music, all right.
Hey, Terry, how you doing, man?
Great up. Fashion, steak. Oh.
I got you. White car?
Diz, just another night or something special?
Something special.
That's it.
And the record of the year is, you got here. Don't worry, be happy. Follow me, here we go.
And the Grammy goes to Fast Car, Tracy Chapman.
And the winner is Christopher Nave, Jethro Tull.
Are you bummed?
Hey, we got to play. That's a great thing for us. I don't know if Jethro Tull belonged in there.
They don't belong there. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe 10 years ago or something.
Were you honored to be chosen to go out there and perform?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I definitely felt it was more effective to go up there and say something, you know, on behalf of rap in general. With taste, you know, tastefully.
You did have a good evening because we were watching you on the monitor.
I was watching myself. I was having a good time.
I would have been happy with the nominations. I was happy with one, certainly. This is kind of beyond certainly my wildest expectations. But yes, I'm very, very happy. I'm also very happy to be with this lady here. This is just extremely, this is what makes me happy here.
All right.
It's incredible. It's indescribable, really, for a whole lot of millions of reasons.
Standing backstage, what did you tell yourself before you went out?
That there was a God.
Right. Hey guys. We need the name of a good Mexican restaurant. We just got here.
Los Camperos.
On what street?
From La Fonda.
Thank you.
Can I see the hat?
Well, I hope Terry David Mulligan and Tony Wanamaker found their Mexican restaurant. Thanks to those guys for that report. Thanks also to CTV for the use of the awards footage there. And by the way, that very gorgeous lady that you saw at the very end, her name, Paula Abdul. She's going out with Arsenio Hall these days, so strike her off your Christmas card list. Have yourself a real good evening. I'm Kim Clark-Chambliss.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Jeffrey Hatcher, March 6th and 7th in Calgary at Old Scotch.